global nationalist. I support nationalism in my country, India, and in all countries around the globe. Today, I'm going to talk about the Quad countries. Particularly, I want to talk about the military agreements between them. First, I want to talk about uh, the latest agreement, which is between Japan and Australia, which I will show you here. So, here, the leaders of Australia and Japan on earlier this month signed a historic defense treaty that Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison said would contribute to a secure and stable Indo Pacific as China expanded its military and economic clout in the region. The treaty was signed during a virtual summit between Morrison and his Australian counterpart, Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida. This agreement is called the Reciprocal Access Agreement. The treaty is only Japan's second such agreement. Its only other military pact is with the United States, which I'll discuss later. Morrison called the signing of the RAA a pivotal moment for Australia and Japan that will form an important part of the two countries' response to the uncertainty we now face. The treaty will also underpin greater and more complex engagement in operability between the Australian Defence Force and the Japan Self Defence Forces. The RAA's signing follows more than a year of talks, and Japan's news agency said the pact will facilitate the joint exercises, the faster deployment of Japanese and Australian military personnel, as well as ease restrictions on the transportation of weapons and supplies for joint training and disaster relief operations. So, why this is important is because this will allow them to conduct joint exercises and which will be good for them, and they can also have access to each other's military sites, which will be beneficial to them in case China attacks one or both of them. So this shows that Australia and Japan, which are the militarily speaking weaker partners of Quad, are now focusing more on becoming stronger militarily so that uh, the military aspect of the group is not over dependent on the US and India, which is a very good sign. And I'm glad that Japan is taking a more assertive military policy, which I spoke about in a previous video on Japan's when Japan's Prime Minister Kishida was elected. And here I want to talk about India's military pact that it signed with Japan in 2020. India and Japan inked a 10-year military pact that will further enhance the cooperation between their armed forces in what is perceived to be a move to counter Chinese assertion that the agreement was linked between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and then Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. This 10-year military pact will allow for the movement of supplies and services between their armed forces, which is similar to the agreement between Japan and Australia, and will allow both of them to cooperate with each other in case one or both of them are attacked. And Australia and India have a defense relationship, and yeah, in 2020, India and Australia concluded a mutual logistics support arrangement in MLSA in 2020 during that virtual summit between Prime Minister Scott Morrison and Narendra Modi. The agreement facilitates more sophisticated operational cooperation, enabling increased complex military engagement and greater combined responsiveness to regional humanitarian disasters. The defense, yeah. So this is similar, where this allows them mutual logistic support, where they can share equipment with each other, resources. This can not just help in case one or both of them are attacked. It can also help in humanitarian disasters, in complex military engagement, etc. Now, the US and India have military agreements too. In These are the following agreements that form the basis of India and US's defense policy, or rather relationship. There is the Logistics Exchange Memorandum of Agreement, the Communications Compatibility and Security Agreement, and the Industrial Security Agreement now in place. And yeah, these agreements also will help the militaries of both India and America to cooperate better with each other, to become more in sync with each other. So, and yeah, I completely support it. And also, I want to talk about Japan and the United States' military cooperation and security treaty. It is a treaty that permits the presence of US military bases on Japanese soil and commits the two nations to defend each other if one or the other is attacked. Over time, it has had the effect of establishing a military alliance between the United States and Japan. This is a perfect treaty. It's more advanced than what India has with Australia, Japan, and the US, and what Australia and Japan have with each other. Those are not agreements to come to each other's aids like that are binding, but this is. And this also stronger agreement because it says that if one is attacked, either Australia or United States or New Zealand, but I'm ignoring New Zealand now, then that an armed attack on any of the three parties would be dangerous to the others, and that each should act to meet the common threat. This is similar to the agreement between the US and Japan. So we can see that, um, yeah, Japan have one agreement. Japan and the US have one agreement. Japan and India have one agreement. But India has three agreements with the US, one agreement with each with Australia and Japan, and Australia has one agreement with the US, Japan, and India. I think that the same way India and the US have three agreements between each other, uh, and other countries in the Quad should also have three agreements. And I think that it should become a military alliance. I think that is the best way to ensure each other's protection, because otherwise, China will feel like it can divide the group and isolate one member from the other. But if it's a military alliance, they won't be able to do that. So I think that's the best situation we can have, militarily speaking, the Quad, if it becomes a military alliance. But I know that's not going to happen. The Indian Army Chief has already said that the Quad is not a military alliance. So next best option would be to increase the military cooperation with each other, which can be done by India's agreements with the US, if India can replicate those with Australia and Japan, and the two of them vice versa. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And if you liked this video about the Quad and want to learn more about the Quad, please click on this playlist. And if you want to see my other video that I made previously on this channel, click here. And if you want to see the sources I had for this video, click on the links in the description below. Thank you for watching. Vande Mataram.